Hello, hello. It is so wonderful to be in the room with all of you incredible people. Congratulations to the 23 contenders, or I guess I say 23 winners. It's amazing. My name is Edna Martinson, co-founder of Bottle Learning. We are a gaming platform for education. We see how, the #1 medium that Gen Alpha is really gravitating towards is gaming, and that's increasing exponentially year over year. So we built a platform that allows educators to deliver practice and assessment items to kids through interactive video games. We go with a games-first approach that matches the stuff that's really engaging that they love using outside of the classroom and really bringing that into the education lens. And I'm joined on stage by 3 incredible people. Joe, founder of Trilogy Software and principal of Alpha School. Also Steve Grubbs, CEO and co-founder of Victory XR and Hollow Tutor. And Dr. Steve Perry, educator, author, and founder of Capital Prep Schools in Hartford, Connecticut. Thank you so much for joining me on stage, everyone. And let's dive into it. So and we'll start with you, Joe. For somebody who's never heard of Alpha School, what's the core promise you're making to families? Like, what does a day in the life of a student actually look like?
So at Alpha School, we make 3 commitments to all the kids. The first is that they will love school. We actually measure it every 8 weeks by asking them, and somewhere between 94 and 97% say they love school. We recently, last year, started asking, would you rather go to school or go on vacation? And we run between 40 and 60% of who would actually rather go to school instead of vacation.
That's amazing.
And so that's our first commitment. The second commitment is you will learn twice as much in 2 hours of academics a day than using an AI tutor. You will learn twice as much in 2 hours as if you sat in class for 6 or did homework. And so our academic performance is both faster and better. And then third, since obviously you can't send the kids home after 2 hours, is we spend the other 4 hours on project-based learning workshops where they're learning all the life skills that we all think are important. Leadership and teamwork, storytelling and public speaking, socialization and relationship building, entrepreneurship and financial literacy, and grit and hard work. And so in a day, you'll come in, you have a launch, you should think of Tony Robbins for kids, and then they literally sit down at an AI tutor for 2 hours, and then the other 4 hours will be all their workshops.
Awesome. Steve, so Victory XR, immersive and AI learning experiences. You also have an AI tutor lens. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. We look at Alpha School and say, this is a great model. But what if you're a public school or a charter school somewhere else? Every school needs access to that AI tutor platform that allows them to do much of what Alpha School does. Alpha has their own secret sauce, and every school can develop their own secret sauce, but a teacher should be able to upload their lesson plan or a PDF or a chapter from a textbook and automatically generate an AI tutoring lesson, flashcards, a quiz, or translation in any language, or just teaching about a concept there. And so that's what the platform does. And, I'll say one other quick thing. I know we don't have a lot of time, but Harvard, at the higher education level, they took 180 students, divided them into 2 groups. And this gets to what Alpha School is doing. Half the students went to class and learned from a human. The other half learned exclusively from an AI professor. The students who went to class regularly and learned from a human learned almost exactly half as much as those with the AI professor. And even though that's higher education, and even though that's Harvard University, what we're seeing is the same impact at the K-12 level.
Thank you, Dr. Perry. Would love for you to dive into Capital Prep. What is that promise for families and for students?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
What is that promise for families and for students that you serve?
A lot of people think that the Titanic sunk because it hit an iceberg. That's not what happened. What happened was they received 7 warnings from ships that were nearby. Ships that didn't sink themselves, ships with the name like America, the Baltic, Californian, told them that what you're doing is going to sink your ship. Captain Smith didn't listen, and we know what happened. Capital Prep is the answer to a question. Why is it that rich kids are the only ones that get good schools? We send 100% of our graduates on to 4-year colleges because we've listened to the warnings. We've seen what doesn't work. In many ways, what we do is we understand the limitations of the circumstances and then overcome them by creating an opportunity where every child is expected to go to a 4-year college. We don't ask kids if they want to go to college any more than we ask them if they want to wear a blazer. That's not their business. We told them wear a blazer, wear a damn blazer. It's befitting that Jeannie put me up here. It's kind of like the Hannibal Lecter of education before dinner. But we send 100% of our graduates on to 4-year colleges despite the fact that many of our children don't even think of college as an option before coming to Capital Prep. So in Connecticut, for instance, we're the #1 high school in the entire state for sending kids to 4-year colleges. Y'all can clap for that. And one of the reasons why that's so important is because the response that the status quo has to that is not to replicate us, but in fact to make our work even harder. And one of the things that they seek to do is actually remove that indicator as a scoring point going forward. So we may not be able to be #1 next year because they may remove it as an indicator of performance. So what we do is we push the system that has been warned for generations that you got to do something different. We keep pushing the system. It's not just about sending kids to college. It's about not getting sunk by an iceberg.
Thank you for that. And would love to get, so, we've heard here about, the promises of AI in education. You're seeing it realized in your schools and in the platform and seeing how it's impacting students. If we think about this in terms of a track field, are we at the start of it in terms of the promise and the impact? Are we in the middle? Are we seeing things really happening? Are we, close to more realizing the impact of AI in education? Would love to start with you, Steve, actually, since you kind of gave that stat.
So I live part-time in Austin, Texas, and in January of this year, I woke up and on my Uber app was Waymo, the driverless AI taxis. And literally within days, 1/3 of the Uber drivers had their jobs eliminated, not because anybody fired them, but because people just started taking the driverless Waymo taxis. And we are on this verge of the same sort of change that we saw when the American economy, the world economy moved from an agrarian base to a manufacturing and industry base. In my home state of Iowa, over a 100-year period, 90% of the farmers were gone, because John Deere built tractors that could handle 2,000 acres rather than 40. That's where we are with AI right now. And it's impossible to predict how every particular career will be impacted, but what we do know is that we're going to see major change, and the single most important thing for students is to learn, #1, how to be a critical thinker, make sure your debate teams are strong, and second, how to be flexible so you can change with the times.
Perfect. Joe, I would love your take on this as well.
So to the question of where we are, we're at the starting gate, right? If you talk to most people, and we've been expanding nationwide, and if we have a room like this, and you say, do you believe an AI tutor will work? 99.9% of the audience says no, right? That it can't work, it's impossible, there's no chance. So I think we're right at the start of it, and I believe a lot of it has to be, our marketing department says, our schools educate kids, our job is to educate parents as to what's available. And just if you take the core also to be important, it's not, if you release ChatGPT, just to be clear, if you release a chatbot into a school, learning will stop. 90% of chatbots are used as cheat bots, you know, and so when you say AI, it's a broad range, and the fears of AI of it can be misused are completely founded, right? That if we could take out chatbots from schools, learning would go up. And so a lot of what we're doing is, what is the right way to use it, right? How can you use it without chatbots? How can you get this great impact? And a lot of it in the world is you have to combine AI with the concepts of learning science, which we've known for 40 years ways kids can learn 2, 5, or 10 times faster. And if you talk to the learning scientists of the world, when they see Alpha's results, they're like, yes, we've known it. It's just never been implementable before. And now with AI, you can. And so I think we're right at the start.
So let's talk about the 2 hours, because you're saying in two hours, they're immersing themselves, you know, in AI that gets them through what would regularly take 10 hours. You're saying remove the chat bots, like, so no chat. So what does that 2 hours look like?
Yeah, so what you really want to do is you want to give every kid a personalized lesson plan, right? To direct to your level. That, you know, if we had to say, you know, our model of education is, you know, what you need to educate a student is, one, and most important, you need a motivated student. And then second, you need to put them in lessons of the correct difficulty. And the ed tech, right, AI, you can generate a personalized lesson plan right where the kid is. You can figure out what they know and what they don't know. And just because they're in 6th grade, they may need a 3rd grade lesson, right? And so you're going to be, the AI is going to be able to give every single person in the class, right, a lesson exactly where they are. And it's going to be able to measure, right, that based on the responses, that you want to give kids at the zone of proximal development a series of questions and content where they're going to be 80 to 85% accurate, right? Not too easy, not too hard. And so that part is something that AI tutors can do fabulously at scale and solve the problem where the kids coming into class today have such an age range, you know, and or knowledge range. We just onboarded hundreds of kids, you know, this summer across the country from super high-end private schools. We're not even talking, you know, it's all over the country, $50,000 private schools. And if those kids came in with a straight A transcript, 2 of them were 1 grade level ahead. Everybody else with straight A's was between 1 and 3 years behind. And when we talk 3 years behind, we're talking about a 7th grader who misses a significant number of questions on a 4th grade test. And if they came in with B's, they were from 3 years behind to 7 years behind. Back to grade inflation, right? There's no C's, D's, and F's. Everybody gets. Teachers have A's and B's to cover the whole range. And so if you have a teacher and you're an 8th grade teacher in that class, right, it's impossible to give everybody and teach at grade level. What the AI tutor can do is give every kid the exact lesson and drive them through it for that 2 hours.
I see. I mean, the adaptive potential is definitely there. Even at Bottle, we started in 2020. At this point, you know, 10 million kids signed up on the platform, 3 million monthly actives. And in 2020, 2021, there's a lot of like teachers saying, hey, I just want to create assignments. And we created the adaptive model that adapts based on kids' learning level. And now we see a lot more teachers leaning on that and saying, yes, I've got a classroom of kids that's, you know, a grade, 2 grades level behind. This is great because it's automatically adapting to where their students are at. Dr. Perry, I would love your thoughts on this. You know, like in your school, how are you thinking about the use of AI, whether, you know, specifically for kids and teachers maybe using it as well? Andy, yeah, love your thoughts.
Yeah. I think we're asking the wrong question. Technology is always going to move a society forward. Right now, the phrase AI, the letters, reflect a promise of something different and better. I think we can overplay it in terms of its pure application, as we could with any form of technology. Inevitably, we have to find a way for it to be able to exist within the political climate that is education. Education is not the Department of Education, it's the Department of Employment. In most communities, your neighborhood public school system. Jeff clapped. The rest of y'all should clap. And so since this juggernaut in places like Memphis that has 2 multinational corporations, Memphis Public Schools is the 3rd largest employer behind FedEx. So bringing in something that's going to take people's jobs, my man, is going to be a challenge. And when I heard you say earlier from the Department of Education, Kirsten, like we know each other really well, but that you're going to turn this over to the states, that freaks me out. I'm in Connecticut, man. What are you doing? Do you understand what they're doing? I got to sue these people just to open one charter school. So more than the question about AI specifically, because we do use it, right? We use it in places like Harlem and the Bronx and in Bridgeport and simply sitting a child in front of a computer who's coming in academically recalcitrant 4, 5, 6 grade levels below where they are is not the same as a $50,000 private school. So you can't just sit them in the room by themselves with a guide. No disrespect. You got to put them in a room where somebody can meet the needs of that particular child in those circumstances so that you can get them to engage in their individualized learning plan. I'm not saying y'all ain't doing it, but what I will say is this. One of the reasons you're meeting a headwind when you go from city to city and state to state is because you don't have the political circumstances that make it possible for a YAS environment, a YAS universe to exist. When I say we're asking the wrong question, it isn't about AI or not AI. It's about, is this country ready for the level of innovation that's required? If all we do is depend upon the people who are teaching right now, we're going to continue to asses kicked by China. China is dragging us. It's not even a fair fight what they're doing to us. So we do know that we need to do something. And it's fitting, you know, as this is fall to winter, this is when some farmers burn their crops, and they burn them so they can get rid of the weeds. Now, I'm not suggesting that you burn teachers' unions, but I am saying Jeannie tried to give me a talk before I got up here. She thought because she wore those shiny shoes, I wasn't going to come up here and be myself. There are systems that are in the way that make it impossible for most of you to grow, whether you're AI or not. And so when we're having the conversation, it's not just about asking about what's the new now wow. It's about what are we going to do with this bureaucracy that's choking us out.
Okay, so that's great. Thanks, Dr. Perry. Which kind of leads me on to the next question, right? We've got a room, you know, we've got policymakers in the room as well. So if we're talking about systems and talking about policy, you know, what's the role of policymakers? We heard in an earlier panel earlier this afternoon, which was great. Tammy Wincup from Securely stated, you know, the state AI acceptable use policies are not really being implemented, you know, in different states, and a lot of states are going with more of like a block it till we figure it out, but the technology is like developing and moving a lot faster. And so in your minds, what can policymakers do to help this innovation, like to help innovative models, or are there any ways they're actually hindering it? And I'll start with you, Dr. Perry, and then would love to go to Steve. And then
I don't know that the policymakers themselves have the ideas, period. I think what we could do is cut the lights on in a place like this with the brain trust that's in this room, give these folks a couple of hours, and they come up with some really powerful, practical solutions. But the problem with people like you is that your nose is to the grindstone so much that you neglect to understand that we have to recognize that there's a policy environment within which we exist. And just because you might get your school across the finish line, it doesn't mean that other people are. So we owe it to one another to begin to accept that one of the most political things that you can do is fight for an education for people for whom the system was designed to never educate. In this country, it was illegal to teach black people to read. Now it's just unpopular. So we have to know where we are in order for us to do what it is that we need to do. So the policy starts with really smart, practical people here doing what we need to do to make sure that we can put in place policies that make it possible for there to be an entire menu, and it really is a YAS orbit where all these stars are in the darkness, creating opportunity for so many children who just dream to breathe free.
That's great. I really do believe that AI has the potential to level the playing field. There are systems that weren't designed to help certain students succeed, and now we really do have an opportunity in the current where we are now for AI to help level that playing field. Would love your take on sort of what policymakers and what the play they have in this.
Yeah, we're big believers in the school choice as the way to solve it. Back to exactly your answer, which is we need entrepreneurs to be able to come up with these solutions. And I do believe there's a lot of innovation that is coming. I believe, in Texas, we just got $1 billion ESA program. And so that gives, 11,000 plus to students. And so out of that, as an example, in using AI, is they're taking the same 2-hour learning from Alpha, and they are starting Texas Sports Academy. And so this is, a middle school program where it's 2 hours a day and then sports in the afternoon. They are opening one in every school district in Texas, so 1,000 of them. There'll be micro schools, 25 single sport micro schools. These are going to be people who come in, bottom 25% academics. It's a $15,000 tuition, so about a $350 parent pay for those who are voucher eligible. And so dramatically more accessible, yet we've opened about a dozen of them so far, and we're getting the same academic performance for people who come in the bottom 25% as who come to a $40,000 or $50,000 private school. To address your point, which is it's the local sports coach who absolutely knows how to motivate those kids and meet them where they are and drive them through both the academics in the morning as well as the athletics in the afternoon.
Awesome. And Steve Grubbs, you recently spoke a couple of months ago, maybe last year, here in DC, kind of talking to policymakers about the benefits and impacts of AI. So can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I had the privilege of giving this answer to a U.S. Senate subcommittee, thanks to Senator Cassidy. Thank you. The first thing that we have to recognize, and this is bigger than this group, but we are in a global race to win this battle for AI. And there's really only two players. There's the United States and there's China. You have an open society and you have a society that very much restricts what people can know. You're not going to find Tiananmen Square in those LLMs, in those large language models. So the point to policymakers is that, and I formerly was a policymaker in the Iowa legislature, so I understand how good intentions can have negative consequences. California passed what looks like it could potentially be a fairly restrictive law as far as AI in education. What we don't want to do is to have government send down regulations, bureaucracies, expensive mandates that slow down what we are doing. There's a role for government to put in place some basic safeguards, but we all know that in most cases, government will go too far, and what will ultimately occur is we'll have the great slowdown in AI development and we'll become Europe. We don't want that to happen. It's important not just for those of us in this room, but for the entire world that the U.S. wins this AI race. The administration recognizes it. I think most of the people in this room recognize it. And so when I speak to policymakers, I say least restrictive, if any at all. Send down some guidance from your State Department of Education or maybe your U.S. Department of Education on how we have to protect students. But most of those laws are already in place. So least restrictive.
I think y'all got this upside down. I'm gonna try this again. If you are talking about taking the jobs of the largest employers in most communities, be prepared to fight. The issue is not whether or not we have a better model. The attack on charter schools never, ever was about the performance of charter schools. It was about the fact that in those charter schools, the individuals who worked were not paying union dues. Their wages were not being garnished by these goons. And here we come talking about we have this method of decreasing by physical numbers the individuals who, I mean, everybody knows and loves a teacher, right? Everybody's son, daughter, somebody's dating, whatever, was a teacher, whatever. And so everyone knows someone who's a teacher, and everybody thinks that the teacher they know can teach. But according to the data, that's not true. A lot of y'all know people can't teach a dog to bark. And so what we have to recognize is that the question is not one of, is AI going to revolutionize education? The question is, how far is the education kleptocracy willing to go to choke out anything that looks like it's going to decrease the number of individuals who work in schools? That's what we're up against. And when we understand that, we come, right? You come with your open hearts and minds, and you're like, no, look at my state test scores. They're like, oh, you cheated. You say, no, but we can do it in 2 hours, and they can get their childhood back. They're like, man, go pound sand. You mean to tell me you don't need as many of these people that I have working for me? No, you can't do that. So I'm saying what we have to keep in mind is what the question is. Because if we don't create the room for innovation, innovation will not live in this country. So we have to push the policymakers or become policymakers, because where we find ourselves is rinsing our hands and thinking, damn, how many times do I have to send 100% of my Black, Latin, and poor children to 4-year colleges before they say, you know, we should give you another school? But instead they don't, because none of my teachers pay union dues. None. No matter how hard they try, no matter how many times they chase my teachers to the parking lot and put stuff on their windshields to tell them and say, no matter what, they still don't. And so on the other side of that are the bureaucrats. And that's what I'm saying we have to continue to fight. So AI, yes, we're gonna AI our way to, but I'm saying we have to have space, and that only comes because we push it. And I'll say this final part here. ChatGPT smart students. Ask for a picture of a smart student. You know what you're gonna find? No black kids. No dark-skinned kids with cornrows. So don't get too caught up in this ChatGPT stuff as well, because it's fed by information that comes from people. So I don't want to overstate what the technology can do. It's still rooted in human experiences. So we have to push ourselves to push the technology to be more humane.
That's good, and it leads to my next question, which is around guardrails, right? Like we talk about it as a race, and so you have all these private companies that are pushing out models. Just like a few weeks ago, Gemini pushed out a new model, and it's like, okay, this is now the best thing, and OpenAI is like, oh crap, we need to, go get back in the race. And so as we think about that, especially as it relates to students, right? If we're saying, hey, we don't want to become Europe, where it's like very, regulated. But at the same time, we want to keep, mental health of kids in mind, and policies moving really slowly. So it's kind of up to the innovators also, and how are you defining those guardrails within your models, within your platforms? Like, what does that look like for you, Joe, at Alpha School?
Sure, and this goes back. We absolutely believe, to this point, if you put ChatGPT with no guardrails or any of these in schools, they're 90% used for cheating, not learning. And so learning is going to go down. And so as a school principal, we have the most AI-forward school, and we have tried in even our controlled environment to enable chat functionality. And even in our environment, it's used for cheating. Right, we've had to take it out, and I believe exactly to this point, right, when we create these personalized lesson plans, right, you get to make sure that you're in control of it. You're not giving and turning it over to the kid and just hoping, wow, I hope this goes well. And I really think that there was a conference at Stanford where I was, talking to the guys at Google, and I was like, the best thing you can do to help education would be to take Gemini out of schools. And so I believe it matters of how it's implemented, not just, it can unconstrained, it's bad. I agree.
As schools evaluate what AI tool or tools they might use, there are two major challenges that you have to think about. Number one is you don't want AI to remove the rigor, you just want it to remove the dead ends. Think about those words, because that is really fundamental. You want it to teach, but you don't want it to give away answers. And so you need to make sure that the way the tools are set up, that they fulfill that. But second is the walled garden issue. Think about if you have lower back pain and you want to learn how to solve lower back pain. An LLM, an AI can pull from the orthopedic textbook, the chiropractic textbook, the massage textbook, whatever the case might be. As a school, and even with all of our schools, we might teach history a little bit different. We might teach science a little bit different. You have to have the ability to quickly and easily put your curriculum into your platform within a walled garden so that the AI pulls first from what you teach. And it's critical that you think about those two things. And I'll leave it there and let you take it.
And I have a specific question for you, Dr. Perry, because you've talked a lot about, the role of educators and the role that they play. So how do you, how do you see the ideal future? Because we are, whether we like it or not, AI is becoming such a core central part of every part of our lives, including in education. So how do we build that to where educators are supported, students, most importantly, are at the center of it, and it can be something that's not just, taking their jobs away, but being used more as a tool?
I'm excited about the future. I love the idea of being able to employ less people. Grown people suck. Somebody asked me earlier, what keeps you up at night? Adults. Sometimes if they're gonna come to work and if they're not. So I think that we are at the precipice of something special. AI is part of the conversation, but I think a bigger conversation is the intelligence, the actual intelligence that's here. People coming up with really cool models. I think the notion of a child going to a school from the time that they are in kindergarten to the time they are in 12th grade is silly. Anyone who has more than one child has seen that even among your family, the neighborhood school or the private school or the AI, whatever, it doesn't work the entire time. I have two sons. Both of them went to our schools. I think the second one would have probably have not rather gone. And if I'm honest, I probably would have rather he go to another school. We had a tough time. But the point is that we want to create an economy of opportunity, much like the best part of the American experience, which is in many cases our ability to have an economy that meets the needs of those within it. And so here, we have an economy. Imagine, if you will, regions of the country that were filled with all these options. Some children do want to sit in a smaller setting. Some kids want to go to a 3,000 kid high school with Friday night lights and a freshman dance and a junior dance, and they want to do that. And they should do that, man. And they want to sit in front of a teacher who looks like she's about to fall asleep, because that's part of the story for them too. We are not here to tell anyone what the best school for anyone is. We're here to tell people that we leave it to the parents. When the Oracle, Howard Fuller, spoke, he said that he's a parent choice person. We are parent choice people. And so all I'm saying is AI is part of the question. The Yases are answering a bigger question. Find all the cool stuff and put it in one room and see what happens. Imagine if our departments of education had that same aspiration. Find the coolest stuff, put it in one state, and see what happens.
That's wonderful. So we have just a couple minutes left before we are all done. So I want to finish this sentence. It sounds a little bit doom and gloom, but hopefully we'll come to the end of it. AI in education will be a failure if. How would you finish that sentence?
if it's put into today's standard schools?
AI will be a failure if we let it lead us to an idiocracy.
You spent a lot of time coming up with that question, so I actually want to answer it because I know you thought about it. So I want to be polite. AI would be a failure if it was the question that we're asking when the bigger question is, what do all children need from the academic experience that they call school?
All right, thank you all for that. I think the beautiful thing about this room is, one, it's a room filled with people who, the whole day since the morning, every single session has been really centered around what is best for kids, right? It's what is the best model for kids. The best part about choice is that parents get to choose what that best model is, what the best school is for their kids, because every child is different. So thank you all so much. You know, different models, different even thought, the ways you guys are thinking about serving kids, but it is all centered around children and what their needs are and how to best educate them, which I think is amazing. I think the potential for AI also to really help accelerate education in a way that really serves all kids is really there. So excited about what the future holds as well. Appreciate this room. Thank you everybody for being here. Thank you all for joining this panel as well. Let's give it up for them.